Welcome back, everyone, to theCUBE's coverage here. We're in our East Coast studio, kicking off. We're phasing in, getting up speed full time in 2025. I'm John Furrier, your host of theCUBE. Peter Tuchman's here, the Einstein of Wall Street. Turned out to be a daily segment when we're going to get going full time, but great to have you on. Last time we did a great segment, a lot of great feedback on the history of the, people love the historical perspective.
They do, yeah. You're in the greatest financial institution in the world.
And the whole 87 thing we talked about. Just, I mean, you're awesome. Thanks for your time. I know you're super busy and you're mentoring folks and you got to go. We don't have a lot of time as we did last time, but we had an election, okay, and markets up. People are super happy. There's a relief.
Yeah.
Okay, the stability and hate and all this nonsense is going to be now. So hopefully Trump will have a second, coming of his life now that he almost, saw his future almost go gone. So, I think. The big story, obviously CNBC covered it deeply, is the M&A market. Obviously we cover it on our CUBE pod, Lena Khan. We're really kind of against her, obviously, M&A market, kind of on frozen mode. But a lot of people are saying, hey, we're starting to see M&A activity. CNBC had a story yesterday that there's already talk of Chevron, other people already talking.
Right.
What's the buzz? What are you hearing on the floor here around the election? Relief?
Well,
nervousness?
Look, let's think about it. I think everyone would love to attribute the 1,600 point Dow rally and 1,200 point S&P rally yesterday, and the fact that we closed record highs yesterday and record highs again today. We actually we kissed 6,000 on the S&P today, attributed to Mr. Trump. And look, all respect to Mr. Trump, I think it was really a relief rally. There's been so much polarity around this thing and the sort of toxicity of the nation around this election. Whatever side you're on, we're going to stay apolitical as far as that. So it was really a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Markets can handle anything except anxiety and unknowns. And now we know what we know, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where this rally is coming from. We don't know enough about what his plans are. Right, there are a number of wild cards within his potential policies, whether it's tariffs in China or whatnot. We saw that from the first administration. But we do know that there's a lot of money being put to work. We have to look at some of these bigger guys on how they're going to position themselves in the next 6 weeks into 2025 and into his presidency. On hopefully they can figure out where to put their money and try and figure out what his plan is, because he is a wild card. He can wake up in the morning and decide that tariffs are the way, or China is his problem, or whatnot. So I think it was a wonderful relief rally, but we need to remember that the day before the election, we also were at a record high. So we can only attribute the last 4 years of record highs to this past administration. And so, trying to put it all in perspective, I think everybody's relieved that it's over, and now we can finally move on and hope that, that everybody has the best interest of the economy, of the markets involved. As far as your question, as far as M&A and whatnot, look, I'm more interested in the IPO market, and the M&A market are fascinating, and they don't have that much to do with each other. I would love to see I think that we've seen a lot of pullback on IPOs in the market just because of the uncertainty around everything to do with the election. People were scared about the market. There's been this, while a market rallies to these high levels, there's also this weird fear about, that is the bubble going to burst? Is this real? Is there support in this? Because we are, you ask anybody, it can't go, that I learned from COVID days in the last 5 years of forensically analyzing this market that it can't go any higher or it can't go any lower. This market can give us anything it wants to.
Yeah.
It's capable of low lows, high highs. You can be lucky for $1, wrong for $50. It's spectacular.
Yeah, and also we had a great earnings week going into the election with the hyperscalers. I mean, look at Amazon, you look at Microsoft, you look at Apple, look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA just replaced Intel.
Tesla, right.
They're all pumping on all cylinders. They're all rocking their highs 10 years.
Correct.
So you got the hyperscalers as a productivity machine. I think we're seeing, I remember in college, the Dow's going to hit 3,000. Okay.
It's amazing to think of it, that we actually hit S&P 6,000. 15 minutes ago, we tickled it, and that's extraordinary, right? I was talking to Dan Ives earlier in the year, and it was trading at 5,300, and he said there's going to be a 6 in front of this number by the end of the year, and everyone thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a fact. Let's look at Tesla. Tesla had gone through this autonomous car thing where it sold off pretty heavily, and it sort of flatlined down 50 or 60 bucks. I once again went to my man Dan, and this is one of the things I'll often talk about. Has the story fundamentally changed? And the story had not. When you look at a company that, that something about it is knocking it off its pedestal, right? And that was what was the autonomous story with Tesla. And he would say, no, nothing is fundamental. Hang in there, earnings are coming out, they're going to beat, and things are going to be okay. Yeah. Sure enough, he was right. They beat, up 17%. It was up $13 after the close that day, $50, $60 the next day, and it's off to the races.
Yeah, what I like about Dan the man, as you say, Dan, your man. He's not yet my man on the
He
Cube.
will be, though.
No, let on the Cube. I like that guy a lot. He'll be great on the Cube.
Yes, he will.
He hits on something in these stocks that are interesting, is that he gets to some intrinsic key things. If you look at NVIDIA, we saw that coming. He saw that coming. CUDA,
yes.
software.
Yeah.
Tesla, software. And by the way, that's portable, space, cars, what else?
Yeah.
So you're starting to see that the economics are changing with this leverage, technology leverage, that's not just reserved for tech companies.
Right.
So we might see a smashing of these ceiling numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm blown away because I'm always like, oh, can't go up. I'm one of those guys who loves the highs, but no, can't get any higher than this. It's like, come on, like, what's going on?
It's amazing. And Dan will always talk about, too, that you've got NVIDIA, you've got everything around that, $1 trillion being put to work, but then you've got the secondary and tertiary stock. I don't know how he describes it. It's, look, it's the people who are going to be using all their products and whatnot, right? So it's not just a trick pony. There's so much around that. All the people that are going to use their products, and down the line, whether it's Microsoft, Google, Amazon, these things are going to just explode. And that's why he calls it a revolution.
So I want to get your thoughts on election night, because I know I was not in town because I was in California. I flew in the day of the election. What was the buzz like on the floor on the day of the election? I know CBC had a marathon session here. Were you here? Do people stay? What's the protocol?
I was here. No, I was. I don't think people stayed around, but I was here, and I also was watching it, and I know that, look, the floor is very Republican. The floor are big pro-Trumpers, and they always have been. And so people were wearing the merch. People were walking around with the hats and the shirts. And so there was a lot of buzz around the election during the day. Now, I would say there maybe are a handful of Democrats on the floor. And so, they sort of kept to themselves, and and basically the floor let the ones who are touting the Trump, the MAGA hats, and go for it. Look,
kind of like California where I live, except the MAGA supporters keep their mouths shut.
Exactly. No, this was the reverse, because the guys who are the big MAGA here, people are very loud, and they have been for a long time. But if you watch the story throughout the night, I mean, it was a fascinating thing. Coming into it, I don't think anybody really knew, even if you asked, because I always ask. I love to see what everybody thought. I don't think anybody knew who was going to win. I mean, it was one of those odd, even people who were big Trump supporters were not clear that somehow this was not going to get pulled off by the Democrats. And so you saw it. Dan was on all night with those guys, and he talked about it, whatever it was 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock, when it was clear that Trump had won. The market was up. I have an amazing memory of the first time he ran. We were down, and people were less pro-Trump at the time, but the market was down 1,000 points at 3:30 in the morning. By the time we opened the next morning, we were up 1,000. It was an intra-morning reversal of 2,000 points. Here, we were literally by 6 to 8 o'clock at night, even before the polls closed, the market was already up 700-800 points on the S&P, and we were up 1,000, 1,200. The fact that we've sustained this rally through to today was a follow-through day. We also had the Fed meeting today, which was fascinating. And as I just mentioned to you, somebody came on during the news conference. People, look, the number came out
at the Fed meeting.
At the Fed meeting, sorry, the Fed meeting. He announced a 25 basis point cut. I don't know if he discussed whether there'd be one more by the end of the year. It's very possible. But people started asking questions, and he was comfortable with labor markets. He was comfortable with everything he had done. And he's done, in my opinion, he's done a great job. We've gone from 8.5% to 2.5%. Everything he promised, he's come through with. So whether people like him or not, I'm a fan, and I think he's done a great job.
The evidence is there.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. But somebody did say, if Mr. Trump were to fire you, like rumors are that it's going to be, would you leave? And he said, said no. And it wasn't like he was equivocating at all. So look, I don't know. Mr. Trump is a bit of a wild card. Why you would want to throw a wrench into something that's so, look, the economy
Don't break it.
Don't break it.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly, and this is not an easy game to play, right? The tools that are given by the Fed are amazing. We learned our lesson. If you go back to 2007, the financial crisis, they threw $800 billion at AIG and all the banks that they had to bail out, right? Over 18 months. It took 9 years to get back to even after the financial crisis. During COVID, they threw $3 trillion into the market over 3 months. We were back to even by August. Remember, COVID was March 15th, 2020. We were back to even by August 19th. We were up 20% in 2020, 28% in 2021. That's amazing. In my opinion, if we had not done that, I think we would have been on breadlines during COVID at that point if we had not done what we did. And so then we had 22, which was just a normal year after 18 consecutive interest rate raises.
Yeah, I think Trump needs to go the next level in his comeback, which is he has to prove everyone wrong that he, in his mind, that when he got in his first term, he promises prosperity, he promises more money in your bank account. That's his, Trump's Trump. He's a character, right? He's a personality. And so, he's got to have the policies that he ran on that say, look, you're going to put money in my pocket, you're going to help me at the kitchen table, prove it. Now, if he goes off the rails, that's the wild card in my mind. I think he wants that. So I think if he just gets the right people signaling to him, he'll go off what signaling he gets. I think the market's saying, look, don't mess with us. Correct. We got this.
Correct. Now, I spoke to a gentleman named Tim Anderson who works on the floor, another guy I'd love to introduce you to. Super bright guy from a broker on the floor, very right-wing Republican, big Trumper. And we were talking about the promise by Trump of tax cuts. Now, apparently, I guess in 2017, the tax cuts were initiated. And so the actual, if you read into the law, that Biden didn't do anything to change those tax cuts, and all Trump needs to do is not change them in any way. And there's the promise by him that we're going to see these big, huge tax cuts may actually not be a reality. It may be that we're just not changing the ones that have been in place.
That's what he's saying. We might not have to do anything.
Correct. And because look, at the end of the day, we are trading, irrespective of two major global wars, all that's been going on in the markets with the labor market and all that's happening, we are trading at record highs pre-election. Right? I mean, on a spectacular mode. NVIDIA, February 2023, we were at $108. February 2024, we were at $900. It went to $1,200, split 10 for 1, and a $50 billion buyback. That's extraordinary.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's extraordinary.
And Dan Ives says we were in the second inning of an incredible game, an amazing game that is a revolution that's going to go on for many years to come.
Yeah, and I think what he's factoring in too is that, again, back to the economic equation, is that NVIDIA's rise, is ironic too. They replaced Intel on the Dow.
Right.
Like, that's a huge replacement.
Yes.
Kind of a diss on Intel. Intel was the darling of the PC revolution.
For so long, correct.
Okay, now they're dethroned. NVIDIA's the darling. What does AMD do? AMD just surpassed Intel. Okay, on their x86 side.
Yeah.
So now you got AMD and NVIDIA coming in, then you got Amazon, and you got Microsoft. You get nuclear power in the cloud. I mean, who knows where this goes?
Correct.
Now you're talking about massive CapEx.
Correct.
Massive spending.
Correct.
On the CapEx side.
Yes, and that's what we're seeing in AI. That's going to continue, and it's going to flow over from NVIDIA into Microsoft, into Google, into Amazon, and things like that. Today we saw that it was a huge move in the Dow. Right, they took the Dow out of the Dow, and then they put in what was the thing today? Oh, they put Sherwin-Williams and what were the other ones they put into the Dow today? There were two additions to the Dow, which we haven't seen in addition to the Dow except Apple, which was a number of years ago. So the fact that you're seeing these valuations that are incredible, right, are causing shifts in these indices that have been extraordinary.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the market's changing so much. I want to get your thoughts on, how you see potentially the next couple months playing out. Obviously, holiday season's coming. What's the trend line there? Does it kind of dip down? Does it hang out? Obviously, the end of the year. depending on who wins the Super Bowl. We know that kind of stat. NFC teams kind of set the pace? Is it,
I don't even actually know that, but I will.
There's a stat that whichever team wins, whichever conference wins, the year goes a different way.
Okay.
I think it's NFC. Someone will correct me on that. But what do you expect the next couple of months? We've got Trump coming in. We've got the inauguration targeted. That's the beginning of the year. What do you expect, based upon your historical view, the market might do?
Okay, so apparently something that I had recently read, and I wanted to really investigate it, what the historic data is around election years. And apparently 8 out of 8 political cycles where we've had a presidential election, a week after the election, the market tends to dip down. You do see a follow-through rally during the first week of the after the election. You see a dip into the November 21st. And then you see a beautiful rally for the last 6 weeks of the market as Santa Claus comes to town. And I think this market is setting itself up for that kind of a scenario. Yeah. As you described, a little bit of a dip, probably starting on Monday, maybe midweek next week, into the November 21st, when we start to see the Thanksgiving effect, the Black Monday, Black Friday effect, and then you see the Santa Claus rally. You know, I don't see... I still see money being put to work. We know that there are billions and billions of dollars still on the sidelines in mutual funds and whatnot. That's what it feels like in the market. Yeah,
and we heard from a previous guest earlier, Michael Lebo, who's has a Accenture background, but he's been doing a lot of work with private equities. The demand on that side has just been waiting to activate. And I think we might see a lot of activity, certainly later stage fundings, you're seeing those get liquid, more companies getting ready to go public. I think that's going to come on. Good point, and you called that out. But I think there's going to be also roll-up too. I think there's going to be a lot of private equity action.
Yeah.
That's going to be fueled by, I think, IPOs coming on board quickly. The tech sector that we're in, word was, hey, hold off on the election. That's the whisper. But now it's like, okay, to get some stability around Trump versus this or that, I think there's going to be a green light. So I think you see a lot more IPOs. Your thoughts on that and the private equity?
IPOs are a fascinating thing. We've seen, you know, in 2018, 2019, it was just it was such a boisterous time for IPOs in this market. And then we saw the environment change so much around the WeWork debacle, right? And that sort of knocked everybody off. And then you really, for the last 2 years, we've seen a bit of a halt in the IPO market around the toxicity of the polarity of the nation and the election. And so I think the sigh of relief that this is over, right? As historically, markets and politics rarely mix. They don't really cross over. This was probably a little more than I would have normally seen, right? And so I think a sigh of relief around that, money being put to work. You have to realize too that we have this new generation of 50 million new retail traders in the market. I see them on social media, on Twitter Spaces and whatnot, who are out there. Some of them have made some good money, are looking for alternative investments, IPO being one of them. It's amazing to see how savvy some of these guys are and women are who have made some money and looking to put their money to work, right? And so there are millions and millions of dollars ready to be put into the market. I think there are a lot of companies that, look, we talked to Brian, we know that there is a pipeline internationally and nationally of companies lining up to list here on the NYSE, right? We've made it really friendly, whether it's NYSE American or just regular NYSE, due to valuation and capitalization, ready to list, and the environment is ready for it, and the market is ready for it. And now, obviously, with this sigh of relief, I think it'll be fun. Yeah, so a lot of prospects even coming in today, actually, some companies. So great stuff. As always, fantastic to have you on. Pleasure.
When we're up and running full throttle, we'll have to check in with you on all market activities. Love the known, unknown aspect of the election. I think that is clearly the vote. The tribe has voted. You know, we now know everyone wants this to be peacetime in terms of toxicity. Want to have one unified message. Clear policies are mandated. Hopefully the markets can do their thing. Government stay out of our underwear, as we say.
I think that will be the case.
We got this. You know.
We will. I believe that's the case, and I think it should be smooth sailing. Look, the market, irrespective of the election, the market, if people really wanted to sell into this and felt that there was really problems in the horizon, we've gotten through a couple of wars, we've gotten through a lot, and there's been no selling. We are not even hitting up against technical resistance at these levels, and these levels are incredible.
Yeah.
So
I think the retail angle, you're saying people want to get into the action. You're seeing that on the privates and the later stage liquidity markets. I know NYSE is working on an index to look at that and doing some good work there. And then these gamers that are all online, you're mentoring many of them. I think the demand for a new retail equation is coming very fast.
Yeah,
and I think that demand is going to change the IPO process, maybe bring it down the pipeline a little bit left, but I think you're going to see a lot more activity, this thirst for that. And I think one big takeaway, and you can appreciate this because you're a content creator as a hobby, I guess. You're a podcaster. The podcasts were a big part of the election. I mean, this is where people want to see people talk for 3 hours. I mean, I'm not going to do 3-hour interviews, maybe about all day. I do a lot of interviews, but they act a lot of hours. But hearing the unscripted, unvarnished truth is a really way, and people are good now looking at video and saying, he's telling the truth. And so trust is huge. You're seeing the podcast format, mainstream media took a little haircut. I mean, I saw a story run, I was in California, on local news, all channels. Lead story was this Liz Cheney thing. Okay, I watched the Trump comment. Trump made a comment. It was literally taken out of context. It was an absolute lie. Some editors made a choice to run that. That to me is not just, biased news channels. That's an editorial professional making a call. Knowing if they did any legwork of any kind, like watch the video. It's only a 1.5-minute clip. If anyone did their work, which they did, they had to watch it. They ran a story that was false, and they had set pieces with Kamala Harris amplifying the misinterpretation. It was blatant malpractice. That is been seen. That kind of thing has been seen by this generation. They're like, no, we know that's wrong. And so I think this is really where this generational things change. Information, computer vision. I can watch with my eyes and listen with my ears. I like that person. Okay, now I know what he or she stands for.
Look, truth will always prevail, but it's amazing how, and I'm hoping that starts to happen again, where you're having people who are speaking their truth, and you're having people run podcasts like you are and stuff, telling what's real.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter, for coming back on.
Absolute pleasure, guys.
Okay, this
Happy
is
trading.
theCUBE, breaking down all the action, bringing the action, what's going on the floor. What's going on the show, on the floor at the stock exchange really will matter. It's this day-to-day, high-frequency insights coming from the Einstein of Wall Street himself. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE, of course, always here, bringing all the action. Thanks for watching.